Hello and welcome to another episode of the Most Serious Podcast. And today I have a person who has, in some way or the other, has mastered a very unique and a very substantial skill, in my opinion, as we realize its importance now more than ever, which is yoga. And thank you so much, Rohil, for joining us today on the Most Serious Podcast. And I'm super glad to have you here.
Very happy to be here and excited for our conversation today.
I think a very good place to start this conversation is how were you as a kid? What were you like as a kid, and what ambitions did you have as a kid?
I think I went through many phases as a kid, so you would have to specify which age. But at some point, I wanted to be a
Let's
cricketer.
start
At
at
some
10.
point,
Let's start at 10.
yeah, I think as a kid, I always I had some or the other infatuation with sport. So
Okay.
at one point, I wanted to be a cricketer. I wanted to be a fast bowler. At another point, I wanted to be a runner, like an athlete. So this was usually, I think, from 10, 11, 12, 13, it was mostly sports related, my dreams and ambitions. And then once I became like 14, 15, it started to change a bit. I wanted to, at that point, make a lot of money, get into politics. So this was the kind of trajectory. But I think as a kid, I was never somebody who was really sorted out in terms of, I know what I want to do and this is what I'm going to follow. So I had friends, for example, who knew that they were going to be get into finance or law, and they
Yeah.
knew it from when they were 13 years old. For me, I had absolutely no idea. Every year, I was changing completely my identity and what I thought I would become. So yeah, I think.
Rohil, I think there was this quote, and I don't know who was the author of it, but I read this somewhere that if you have a fixed identity, clear identity of what you want to be in life, then your punishment is that you actually become it. And that is the only thing that you become. So
Mhm.
the subjectivity of what a human being can be, I think that gets limited once you have. So I sometimes find this quote very amusing as well, and sometimes I find it very meaningful as well. Like a person who doesn't know per se like what he exactly wants to do has that flip side of doing so many other things, right? So I think that subjectivity of human experience of not knowing even what you want to do at an early age, I think is very beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think like going a little bit deeper on that same point, I think there are different phases in life. And I think that especially early on, it's good to explore, to do different things, to not be fixated upon having a career path or a particular trajectory that you're following. And then of course at some stage in life, you need to kind of commit to one thing to really go deep into it and do well and build a skill set and build a network in that space and so on. So there are of course pros and cons to it. But I think keeping that open mind initially, and then once you really figure out what you love to do, kind of honing in on it and really going deep.
I think one compliment that I have to give you right off the bat in this conversation is that you seem to have a very calm outlook and a very clear kind of pathway between what you think and what you're speaking. At least that's what I can gather from here. So I want you to double click on this, and I want to understand this from your lens that let's start with this moment only. Like, how present are you in this conversation, and how different it is now from possibly the time you started practicing yoga or meditation or mindfulness.
So I would say, as a part of this conversation, there are of course two things
Yeah.
happening. One is the thoughts that are going through my mind and my ability to keep clarity in my thinking, not be distracted as I'm speaking, not float into other ideas and so on. So that's one. And then the second is actually being able to fluently deliver what is going on in my mind into speech. And I think that both of those are separate skills. So, from the thought perspective, to have more clarity, yoga definitely helped me a lot. Meditating and doing yoga practices, reconnecting with my body, helped me to be more calm, more grounded. So my thinking is not all over the place as it was maybe 7, 8, or 10 years ago, where I had many ideas. I would keep jumping, even in conversation, from one idea to the next, and so on. So that's definitely helped. And then the second, I think, actually putting it into speech, that clear thought process into clear speech, is a practice of public speaking, of delivering sessions, of talking theory, philosophy. And I think that coincided with my yoga journey, because as I got into yoga, um, I soon began to teach. And then a few years later, I found myself teaching in a yoga teacher training program in Goa. And the owner of the school quickly realized that this guy, he speaks English well. Let me push
Yeah.
him to the more of the theory classes. So he started to give me to teach the yoga history, yoga philosophy, yoga anatomy. And I think over the years, like it's been now 7.5, 8 years, uh, where I'm spending many hours speaking in public. And I think
Yeah.
that that's refined my ability to speak clearly, not have too many filler words, and so on. And so I think it's both those combined.
That's a very fair distinction, right? And I think, the ability to have that clarity in your mind allows you to make this distinction, because I feel the way you structured this answer as well kind of relays back to why I asked this question. And you've explained it quite simply and effectively. I think that helps people to understand how to develop this skill, and, distinct it from the clarity of thought that one person might have. So I want to ask you a question which is related to, something that you practice and you talk about, yoga, and how do I understand it and where to even begin. Like, there are so many other interpretations that are thrown at you from social media, from possibly family anecdotes, from relatives, from friends, from your teachers at school. What Where do I start as a person who's possibly 22, 23-year old and is interested in getting their health in a better shape? Where do they start when they hear the word yoga?
So I think there are two opposite notions of what yoga is in
Yeah.
today's conversation. So there's one end of the conversation that says that yoga is not a physical practice. It's about it's about the mind, and it's you're basically trying to reach a state of samadhi, enlightenment. It's much more than just physical practice. So this is one aspect. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, you have people who are coming into yoga to become more flexible, purely from the physical
Yeah.
aspect, as a workout, approaching it as a workout. So I think where yoga has its biggest benefit, especially for those of us who are the young generation people, like you said, who are in their early 20s, I would say is a combination of the two. Because ultimately, one is at that stage, at an age where one is creating their career, one has just come out of university, one is trying to stand on their 2 feet, be independent, be seen as an adult. They want to feel like an adult, they want to take adult decisions. So, and they kind of, you're building the foundations of your entire life at that stage. So it's an important stage. Even though it's a time where it's also good to explore and so on, it's also a serious time in some sense.
Yeah.
And I think that how yoga can really help there is to create a lifestyle. So, where it's not only just about doing some asanas or doing some meditations, but to create a complete lifestyle where you're able to have better energy to work harder. You're able to have more clarity in your life of where exactly you want to go. You are able to have the tools for your emotional regulation, so that your emotions don't get in the way of your career path and your, what you're creating. Because one can be also emotionally quite fragile at that age. It can
Yeah.
go into all kinds of bad company or drugs, and can get sidetracked. It's easy to get sidetracked, can get into anxiety or depression. And I would say all of these things like anxiety, depression, these are actually lifestyle diseases. And so
Hmm.
this is where yoga has the biggest benefit, is to create the right lifestyle, the right mindset, so that you can build a good foundation in whatever way you want to, whatever career or whatever path one is choosing at that stage.
I think the biggest point in this is the energy bit, and that possibly cuts across everyone who listens to this conversation and practices yoga, because I've had like a couple of more conversations, I think similar to this topic on the podcast, and both of them were very big on, how people generally feel a lack of energy during their day, and that is becoming more and more like the norm. Like at the morning only you need a coffee or a Red Bull or something like that, and that's just kind of like glorified and celebrated for no reason. Like, no shade to people who drink coffee or consume that, but I just feel sometimes that it has become such like a normalized way of looking at your energy levels. And when someone tells you that a practice like yoga can help you elevate your energy levels, I think that is something which is directly transferable into anyone's lifestyle. So I want you to speak more on how do you break it down to someone that your energy actually increases by doing yoga, or you feel more energetic, or is it a placebo effect? What is happening in our body or mind that we feel more energetic if we practice yoga?
So I think though it might seem counterintuitive, it's actually yoga helps us to relax better, to have higher quality relaxation and to slow down better, which feeds into us having more energy when we need to have energy. So
Oh,
we know the term hatha, and we all use the word hatha. Ha means sun and tha means moon. So in the
yeah.
hatha yoga practice, we are essentially trying to balance the sun and moon energies. And in hatha, when we say hatha, I mean all forms of yoga, whether it's vinyasa, ashtanga vinyasa, any of the different styles that are taught in the studio, they're all a part of hatha yoga. And so the ancient yogis, they would see it as they, of course, at that time didn't have the tools to speak about the nervous system or the vocabulary to speak about the nervous system. So they spoke about it in terms of the sun and moon energies, that hatha yoga is a practice of mastering the sun and moon energies. Today, of course, from a scientific perspective, you can there's a lot of studies on how yoga is affecting the nervous system, the functioning of the nervous system itself. So we have within the autonomic branch of the nervous system, we have the two, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic is our fight or flight response, and parasympathetic, the rest and digest response. So often what happens is, especially if you're not taught this, is that we are constantly being pushed to be more productive. We want to be high alert, put out a lot of work during the day, and kind of our society today is very stimulated. It's always in this fight or flight
Yeah.
mode. So we drink a coffee, we activate this fight or flight mode. And when we activate it, certain processes in the body are prioritized, while certain other processes in the body are not prioritized or deprioritized. So, for example, when you drink a cup of coffee, you'll have a rush of energy to your brain. You'll be able to make clearer decisions, think more clearly, do the work that
Mm.
needs to be done. And you'll have a rush of energy to the muscles in the body. So some people use coffee or energy drinks like Red Bull, which have a lot of caffeine, as a pre-workout
Yeah.
drink, for example. But this is all happening at the expense of some other processes, because
Mhm.
it's like you have a set amount of energy and now you're pushing the energy in one direction to the brain and the muscles. It has to go away from somewhere else, right? And
Yeah.
where it's going away from is the digestive system. And this is happening because the sympathetic activation of the nervous system is kind of putting down the thyroid glands and so on. So your digestive process is put aside, the functioning of the inner organs, the production of various hormones, all of that is kind of deprioritized. So, what is important is that we have a cyclical activation of our nervous system. The sun energy, this activation, fight or flight, and also the moon energy, the rest and digest, where we have some high quality relaxation. Now, what happens to us most of the time is we finish the 8 hours of work. We're really focused. We are in this. We've drank 4 5 cups of coffee. We've got shouted at by our boss. We're stressed. We're running. We're trying everything we can. We go on the way back home. Maybe we go for a workout or something. We come home, and then we don't really get into a high quality relaxation. This parasympathetic branch of the nervous system doesn't really become active. We open our phone and we start scrolling one reel
Yeah.
to the next. And this is actually still a form of sympathetic activation. It's the freeze response. We're so tired, we don't really want to make any decisions, and we just kind of freeze. We
Hmm.
we we put on a video game, we watch Netflix, these are all stimulating activities. They're still stimulating us. They're giving us that dopamine hit. Or somebody might be addicted to some substance. They might drink something, or smoke a joint, or be addicted to pornography, or whatever it is. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, they kind of, you need something to stimulate, to keep you stimulated, because you've been stimulated whole day. You've become used to
So
be that
used to it.
level of,
Yeah.
yeah, level of stimulation. So
Mm.
what actually yoga teaches us is how to get out of this stimulated state, so we can truly relax. If I can come home at the end of my day, and instead of switching on the TV or my video game, if I can do 15-20 minutes of asana practice. And why it's so important, the asana, the postural practice, because we have all this tension that's built up in the muscles of the body, this energy in the muscles, which we haven't released. And we have these hormones, the stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which are in our bloodstream. When we do asana, it increases circulation. So these hormones, they are taken out of the bloodstream. We relax the muscles of the body. So it quickly transitions us to the parasympathetic activation. That's why after a yoga class, you feel like really relaxed and nice.
Yeah.
You don't feel the need in that moment to binge watch TV or to check out your phone. You're okay just staring out of the window, and having a chilled out conversation with someone. So we want to transition, and then using breath work, meditation, or any other tools for a period of time, and then you can, if you feel like, you can, I don't know, do whatever other activity. But that transition from sympathetic to parasympathetic is what yoga is giving us, those tools. And according to hatha yoga, this relaxation is not something that happens automatically. It's a
Hmm.
skill that we need to work on, that we need to develop, like all other skills in life. We need to understand how to develop the skill of relaxation. And then if we are in that parasympathetic dominance for the rest of the evening, our sleep is much better. Because our sleep is much better, we feel more rejuvenated. Our appetite is more. We digest food better, and that translates to just having much more energy the next day and the days from there.
I think when you break it down like this, it feels like it's very, fairly fundamental, and it should be innate to understand. But once I hear this, then only, my mind ever gets to the thought of, wow, I've never thought about it. Right? Like, we don't ever evaluate our quality of rest as much. We don't
Mm-hmm.
spend time into, thinking, or even, being just interested in the quality of rest. And this is so interesting that you talk about it, because now I think, now recently I've been hearing that 8 hours of sleep is now being, like, celebrated, and it's more of like, you have to get those 8 to 9 hours of sleep in. But in terms of thinking about how is that quality of sleep, what are your night routines like, how disciplined, or how much into consciously are you into those routines? I think that is never discussed, and probably that is one of the reasons why we wake up tired, because essentially
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't ever wake up tired, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your body is supposed to wake up with energy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is one thing which you discover once you start doing yoga. And do you think there is one particular challenge which you have observed across your clients or people who start yoga? Like, why do they not continue it post 5 or 7 days? What's the biggest drop off point for people?
So I think the biggest drop off point is people coming to yoga with a mindset looking for a quick fix, like thinking that it's just a few practices and they're going to become, everything is going to be great straight away. So I think for it to really work, and it does work, because I've seen many people who've come, who've completely transformed their life. They've changed, their mindset. They've changed their quality of emotions. And for it to work in that way, one has to really uh, be all in. So you have to be ready to make fundamental changes to lifestyle, sleeping early, waking up early. And for a lot of people, what happens is that there is a big baggage in terms of all their friends stay up late, meet in the night,
that's very true.
either drink or smoke or whatever it is. So all their social gatherings are happening around some substance use, or and usually later on in the night. And all of this, what this does is that's a particular kind of lifestyle that even if you can't just interject a bit of yoga into that lifestyle and expect it's going to change, completely transform you. Okay, it might help or support you, but ultimately you want to have the whole package for
Yeah.
it to truly work. And
Yeah.
so I think this is the biggest resistance, is people in that period of them changing and everybody around them stays the same. And how do they navigate that? Because some they might feel lonely, or I don't have any friends now, and so on. But I think it's just a matter of time, because you start to connect with like-minded others, people who are also interested in their health, who are also taking care of their lifestyle, who it's you can still meet interesting, fun people. It's just that you would meet for in the evening to go for a walk, or to go for a workout together, or to do some other kind of activity.
Yeah.
So, but I think the social element is something that holds a lot of people back.
It's interesting to think about what you just said, and how it also kind of ties to what we were discussing previously. Like, if people ever realized that this is not a quick fix, and this can fundamentally shift something like your just energy levels across your day or your life, then you realize ki how big of a change it is. And I think one thing I heard, or one conversation I heard, and I don't remember who and who were discussing, probably it was a podcast or some audiobook, that why we don't feel tired when we play sports or we do something that we really enjoy, even though it's physical exertion at peak, is because, and why we get super tired once we come once we leave our home from an AC environment, go to an office which is AC with all these fancy stuff, sit on a computer for 8 hours, and then come back home. We've done literally minimal physical exertion, but we feel like really tired. So he said that the difference in it is because you're not aligned with your mind and your body both. Whenever there is misalignment between mind and body, so like if you're not conscious, present in doing what you're doing, then there is always going to be friction, and that friction is going to, more energy loss, lead to more energy loss. And that concept also like kind of struck a chord with me, and I was like, that's really interesting to think about. Because I yesterday only I went and played football at the last minute, like probably I came after office, and there was one slot open and I went and played. And from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. I played, and 9:30 I was feeling more energy in my body than I was feeling 9:30 a.m. in the morning. So that
Yeah.
was like so crazy.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do some activity early in the morning. So whether it's doing
Yeah.
a yoga practice, it doesn't have to be high intensity. Like you don't have to go for a 1 hour run or something. But doing physical activity first thing in the morning, it kind of primes your body and sets you up for the day. Like I can see a clear difference on days when I do my practice versus
Hmm.
I don't do my practice, in my energy levels. In my energy levels, my appetite, and my so I think it's great to start the day doing some physical activity. And especially if you're young, if you're male, I think it's even more important that you need to, every day in the morning, you need to get out there and do something hard physically.
Yeah.
And this really primes your mindset and everything for the rest of the day.
That's fairly interesting. What do you think? How do you usually introduce the mental aspect, or how yoga or meditation, mindfulness affect someone's mental health in terms of how they can understand it? Like, again, physical energy levels everyone understands, because energy is just something that you can feel.
Mhm.
But when it comes to something so intricate as mental and emotional health, which I am pretty sure most people have a hard time evaluating their own selves first, because there's no clear definition of it, and
Mhm.
it's very hard to understand these both terms, like what is emotional health and what is mental health. So how do you even you know translate this benefit that mindfulness, meditation, yoga gives to those two by
So
breaking them down?
I think like my perspective actually on this is that we nowadays we follow a Western perspective on
Hmm.
mental health. So in the Enlightenment era, we had in Western philosophy, you had the mind body duality, for
Yeah.
example, that there is you separate the mind and the body. So they in the West you would have physical therapists for physical health, and you would have psychotherapists for mental
Mental
health.
health. Yeah.
And today we've kind of taken that same thing, and we think that yes, this is the way we look at our health. Physical is separate from mental, emotional health. But if you look at actually our indigenous original way of looking at it through yoga, through Ayurveda, there's no distinction between one's mental health and one's physical health. They're both interconnected. And let me just break this down. So from the Ayurvedic perspective, for example, we if you are doing some physical exercise, or you are eating a particular kind of food, you're waking up at a particular time, you have a particular lifestyle, all of these activities that you do, they are creating physically in your body, they are moving, they are increasing circulation, they are activating our nervous system or relaxing the nervous system, and that in turn is producing certain hormones in the body. Those hormones are creating these biochemical reactions, and ultimately it's this all this chemical biochemical reactions happening in the body, making us feel the way we feel,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, for example, there's been amazing research in the last 10 years in neuroscience, for example, that if you eat unhealthy food, really fried food, highly processed food for a long period of time, this affects your gut health. So there are certain our gut is full of bacteria, and certain bacteria the population will increase, which can more better digest those processed foods, and certain other bacteria will reduce. There's also research that has found that 90% of serotonin in the human body is produced by four spore forming bacteria in the gut. So
Wow.
we
That's
also know that if you're stressed for a long period of time, you're eating not good food, you have chronic stress for a long period of time, you're drinking alcohol, all this is upsetting your gut. And
hmm.
we have a connection between the gut and the brain through the
Yeah.
vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is a part of the autonomic nervous system, and essentially, what is happening then is that one may start experiencing depression, anxiety, and so on. And we're talking about these as purely a mental health issue, but it's a lifestyle issue. It's not only mental health, it's physical, mental, lifestyle, your nutrition, your activities, the stimulants or drugs you're consuming, like alcohol or whatever it is. All of these play into that mental health. Of course, your purpose and your emotions and all also affect your mental health, but it's also your physical activities and lifestyle, nutrition. So from this perspective, I would say that to look at one's mental health, one should start to look at it from a holistic perspective. So what can we do right? How can we set if one is suffering from depression or anxiety, I would say we approach it through lifestyle, not through medication. So we start to see how can I sleep really well, sleep early, wake up early, introduce exercise first thing in the morning, have really high quality food, nutritious, fresh food every day, have some purpose, some goal in your career which you're chasing after. And if you do these 4 5 things right and do it for a few months, I assure you one would not be feeling anxiety or depression at the end of that.
Do you also ever wonder about the fact that this difference that we are now kind of used to looking at between the mind and the body, and separating them as two different entities, and just making sure that we are clear on the differentials of those, how much of it affects our ability to also physically, I think, improve? Because there's one there are so many anecdotes of people recovering from situations like which are physically just deemed impossible, and we just are constantly talking so much about mental health weakness, I feel there's loss of conversation on mental health strength and the wonders it can do. Like, so people
Mhm.
have done unimaginable feats, and like human body, people didn't know that could be achieved, and just by sheer mental strength that they had, and the willpower and things like those. I think that conversation really gets missed out once we just try to make sure that we are covering weaknesses only. I think that is also one thing that people should talk about more.
Yeah, I think you're completely right that our mind is an amazing tool that we can use, to push ourselves beyond what we think is even possible. And I think this you can see very clearly that with the mind, mental strength, it takes years to develop it. It takes
Yeah.
challenges and going through life's experiences and so on. But for example, you see people in their 20s, early 20s or late 20s who actually should be in a space where they have the energy, they can work really hard, and they can create amazing things and so on. But usually it's people who are in their 40s or 50s who are really doing big things, working
Yeah.
long. If they are ambitious, they're working long hours, starting amazing organizations or businesses or whatever it is. It's essentially because they have refined that mindset over time, and that they can take failure in their stride. They know how to manage their emotions, so that that sadness is not going to cause them to become paralyzed, or fear is not going to cause them to shut down and not try. So it's, I think, mindset and mental health is really about managing our emotional states, managing basically how do we show up when life is not going good,
Hmm.
when it looks like from the outside things are not working, it looks like we might fail. How do we show up for ourselves and push through that? And I think that is where the mindset becomes really, really important. And it's like a muscle. We go to the gym to work out our muscle the same way we need to work out the mental muscle. And I think
Yeah.
doing hard things
Yeah.
regularly, pushing oneself to do hard things outside of our comfort zone. So for
Hmm.
some people, maybe running is really enjoyable. So then for them, I wouldn't consider that a hard thing. So doing something that you don't really like to do,
Yeah.
and pushing yourself to do it, actually, it's there's a lot of science also behind this
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
With We have essentially two dopamine reward pathways in the brain. One is more linked to our reptilian brain, so it evolved earlier in our evolutionary history, and that one wants instant gratification, instant pleasure seeking. And it will kind of push, if we allow it to, that dopamine pathway, if we get caught up in it, we can become addicted to drugs and all kinds of things that might ruin our lives.
Yeah.
And then there's the second dopamine pathway in the prefrontal cortex, which evolved later in our evolutionary history. And this one is our capability to say no to the instant gratification in
Hmm.
exchange for some future goal.
Yeah.
So we are in this moment, we take pain so that we are moving towards creating something amazing in the future. And this second dopamine pathway is activated, or is, we can have more energy, or you can say that gets prioritized compared to the older dopamine pathway when we do difficult things, when we challenge ourselves to do hard things. So
Yeah.
I think, and this is, I think, especially important, I would say. It's for both, for men and women, it's really important to do hard things. But I think especially for men, today I see so many men uh, who are battling with anxiety,
Yeah.
a sense of self, who they are. There's a lot of depression, and I think that the most important thing that men need to start doing is do hard things. Don't take the easy route. Start challenging yourself, and through challenging oneself, one finds a purpose. One in that difficulty that one is generating for oneself, one's mind gets clear, one can start think more clearly about their future, about what is their purpose, their dharma in this world, in this life. So I think, yeah, that's one thing I would definitely say: do hard things and keep challenging yourself to do hard things.
This is very similar to something I also came across recently, which was you can't treat male depression the same way you treat female depression, which is by talking more about your feelings, or having more expressive sessions as such, because men don't tend to react to those as well as they might to assigning them a task, which is just as futile as putting 300 bricks from here to here in a span of next 3 days or something like that. Just
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you give them something hard enough, and you give them the tools to make sure they get started on it. And in the process of doing that, layman's work, you introduce some bit of challenge in their life, and once they overcome it, then they start to realize that they start to feel that sense of power inside them, which
Mm-hmm.
helps them overcome that mental health battle, whatever they're facing, which is again very interesting and very similar to what you just said. Integrating hard things in my own life consciously allows me to prepare for the things that are going to come in my life, which won't be in
Mm-hmm.
my control.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great example you took, is that what's happened now with, I feel, with the psychological establishment, is that you find somebody who comes to a therapist with depression, and you tell the person it's because of your past, your traumas from childhood and so on. And of
Yeah,
course, there that traumas definitely play a role, your past definitely plays a role. But it's not the complete picture. Most of the
yeah,
times, people are in that state because they have a lack of purpose, a lack of meaning. They don't know what they're supposed to do in life. They don't know, they don't know how to be successful, how to manage their emotions. They are not fit. So all of these things are kind of building up, and I think pushing yourself to do hard things gives one back that sense of agency, that okay, yes, I can change something in my
yeah,
life. It's not just going to be like this forever. If I put in the effort, it will change. And I think that those small victories that one experiences, it kind of, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense, especially for men, because we need to do things, we need to get after things, we need to build organizations, we need to provide for our
yeah,
family, provide for others. We need to get into that state of being, and when we do that, that's when we feel fully empowered, fully yeah, like you said, we feel that sense of power.
yeah.
And that eliminates all the mental doubt and anxiety and depression, because we start to reconnect with our more primal aspect of ourselves.
I think it also is very helpful to have a version of yourself which, or at least have an identity of yourself which you feel is the greatest possible existence of you,
Hmm.
and compare yourself to that and see, is there something that you can do today to maybe get a little bit closer to that version of yourself. And sometimes whenever I remember this exercise and I think about it for my own personal self, there are almost always 5 to 7 things that I can do differently right now, which will make me very close to the ideal self that I could be at this point in my life. And I think that allows you to realize, the potential that
Hmm.
you have in yourself, and then to, because I think it's very important to also incentivize it, to make someone believe that this is capable, right? You can achieve so much. Why are you settling for so less?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's exactly that. Each of us has amazing potential, but we cut ourselves short. And I think the problem also is that we are expecting somebody from outside to come and save us,
Yeah.
some elder person or somebody who's famous already, who somehow notices us and says, you are so smart, you're going to be the next amazing person, or whatever in your career, you're going to kill it. And we're waiting for somebody to come and pat us on the back and tell us that we are awesome, and that will give us a sense of, okay, yes, now I can do it. But it's, I think the key is to build that self belief, you
Yeah.
know that I can do it. It's possible to build this self belief, and it should not be done in an egotistic way, that okay, I'm something special, I'm this and that. But in a way that I am actually undercutting myself, that I can do much better than I'm currently doing
Yeah.
in many aspects of my life, with my health, my relationships, my career. And I'm serving myself cheap to the world. So
Yeah.
I need to work harder and deliver more. And I think that that mindset, it unfortunately it's not taught at the time of in schools, in that. So I think like we need to find that self belief in ourselves, and that comes through a whole process. It's not
Yeah.
something that you do one activity and you'll get to that self belief, but I think it's a process. And that's where I think yoga is really useful, of reconnecting with our body, feeling better in our body, doing meditation so our mind is more clear, doing pranayama, our nervous system calms down. And when we combine these things together, we can then start to access that self belief within us.
I think it's a perfect summation and good way. Kind of we've come full circle from starting talking to yoga, and then we've covered so many different things, and we've ended right at yoga. Thank you so much, Rohil, for joining us today. And I think the part about this conversation which really will get stuck with me is how present you were during this conversation, and which in turn made me more present during the conversation. So I think this, sometimes I realize that there are some things that you just, some things that get stuck in your memory automatically without any effort. And in a pattern for me, I've come to realize whenever I'm present, the most present during that time, I don't have to remember anything about that moment. More or less, I know, things to very intricate details because I was present doing that thing and I can remember it for years. And sometimes I think that right now I don't have control over clicking that bone on my own, but I think that is very helpful.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation and the flow of our talk today.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I think we'll have you again whenever we want to make a deep dive on any of one particular yoga types. But super grateful to have you today.
Yeah, for sure. At any time, would love to be back.